Guitar intervals, C major, A minor, and related modes practice session. This time looking at the D Dorian using the focal point of the D note located on the second string down from the top of the guitar, part number 1. Remember, one of our objectives is to get all of our resources lined up in the same direction to make them as easy on the eyes as possible from the perspective of the player of the guitar, who is of course located behind the guitar. Therefore, my guitar will look like I'm left-handed, but I'm not. We just flip the guitar around so it mirrors what you are doing. When we are behind the guitar, typically we're going to have the fretboard on our left, the low or heavy string on top, going from left to right towards the body or base of the guitar. Our worksheet will be orientated similarly, this being representation of the top or heavy string, the one closest to the ceiling, top to bottom, left to right, with the orientation as though we took the guitar and just imprinted the strings on the screen. So we're going to be looking at our intervals, this time looking at the D Dorian. Now, last time we looked at our C major. When we're thinking about the D Dorian, we have the same notes. It's the same shapes. However, we're looking at it from the perspective of the pivot point of the D as opposed to the C. So just a quick recap here. Last time, we could bar off this shape and we were focusing in on the C that is located on the top or heavy string of the guitar, which you can imagine that is in what I might call position number 1. If it was a pentatonic, you might start on this A and play the pentatonic from A to A like that, for example. We could then add the 2 other notes to get a 7 note instead of a 5 note scale, which would be like this. Right? But that would be going from A to A, which basically means we would be playing in A minor. That's what it's going to sound like. If we went from C to C, we would be playing the same notes, but we can consider that to be in the C major. So that's just to allow us to locate these colored notes as basically the C major and related modes. C major, A minor, related modes, they all have the same notes. Now, instead of us focusing on that C as the pivot point and looking at all of the intervals related to it, we're now going to be going to the D. So we could go in our worksheet and just go right down here to the D, where we have all of the notes mapped out, which are mapped out this way: D, E, A, C, and so on. But we're skipping every other note, doing it that way as though we're going to construct our chord construction. So the other way that we can look at it, which might be a little bit more clear, is to say, let me reorientate my worksheet, making that the first note, and then we'll just reorientate our perception. And that's what we're doing when we say we're in a D Dorian, remembering that when we are in a Dorian mode, it's going to sound, even though it has the same notes as the C major, more like a D minor. It's a minor mode. So it's closer sounding to a D minor than it is a C major, and even though we're using the same notes. So that means that this shape that we can see right here is going to be the same. I'm just going to copy that and put that down here. We'll paste that here. So we're in the same shape, but now we've reorientated it to look at that D, and the colors the colored notes are the same, but we're emphasizing. Let's pull this one over here. We're emphasizing the colored notes that are the 1, 3, 5 related to the D, which is going to be a D minor. Notice the D minor, if I have a triad, is the same as a D Dorian, because the first 3, the 1, 3, 5 are the same in the scale of a Dorian and a minor. But when we go beyond the 1, 3, 5 to the 7, 9, 11, and so on, there are going to be differences between a minor and a Dorian. Okay, so that's going to be part of our focus here. So as we go through and look at the intervals for the Dorian, we're going to emphasize this same shape to try to get that in our mind, because all of the intervals will be in this shape. If we count something out and we land on a white note, then something went wrong, right? And we have to count it out, because that's like the lava right now. So that's going to be part of our internal controls from an accounting perspective, right? It's one of our checks that we can kind of check to see that everything is lined up the way it should be. We'll also practice our intervals, which are now listed here with relation to the Dorian, and we can kind of compare that as we go through to the intervals that are on the minor, and we'll have some intervals which will be different given the fact that the Dorian is a minor interval, a minor mode. We're going to have some minor intervals instead of the major intervals. So we will practice some new intervals as we look here. We'll also be looking at the intervals that are related to each string. So that means that we're going to have to go above this string sometimes, and to figure out the interval above is not typically what we often do, because we usually measure from top to bottom, because that's usually going from the lower tonality to the higher tonality. So we have to think about the inverse going from the bottom to the top. So that's another thing that we'll practice when we pivot around the D Dorian. So a quick recap on the intervals for the Dorian versus the major. So if I look at the major, these are our intervals up top. We have the perfect first, and then we have what we would expect from a major. We call it a major second. The major, the second here, this 2 representing the second in the 7-note scale. And then I put a 2-note major second so I can memorize the actual distance in terms of our measuring steps, the primary measuring steps, which are notes or half steps. And then we've got the major third. So this is the third of the scale. It's a 4-note away major third. And then we have the perfect fourth. So it's the 4th of the scale. It's actually 5 notes away distance-wise. And then we have the perfect fifth, which is a 5-note away, a 7-note away, perfect fifth. And then the major 6. And then the major 7, 11-note away major 7. Now, generally, if we go from a major to a minor, what would happen is the perfects, for the most part, stay the same. So you've got the perfect first, fourth, and fifth, and then the minors basically flip. Except there's an exception of the second here. For some reason, on the main minor, which is the Aeolian, is the minor, it still has a major second. It's actually the Phrygian is more minor than the main minor. So what we're doing is we're going to a Dorian mode, which is a minor mode, but it's not the main minor, which is the Aeolian. So that means you would expect that basically most of the minors would flip, and the perfects are going to basically be the same. And then you got to look for the one difference between the main minor and the Dorian. So in other words, the main minor is going to flip everything that's not a perfect except for that major second. And then the Dorian's going to have one interval difference, and that interval difference is the major 6. So in other words, the minor Dorian is a minor mode. It still has a perfect first, as we would expect. It still has the 2-note away major second, as we would expect if we compared it even to the minor or Aeolian mode, because that's the funny one that still has a major second, even though it's a minor mode. And then we've got the 3-note away minor third instead of a 4-note away major third. That's what we would expect for a minor mode. And then we've got the 5-note away perfect fourth. So the perfect is still intact. It's the same as we would expect. And then the 7-note away perfect fifth is the same, still intact as we would expect from a perfect. And then we have the 9-note away major 6. This is the funny one, which is why it is green. Why is it funny? Because you would expect that would be flipped in a minor mode to a minor 6, an 8-note away minor 6. But it's not, because it's Dorian. That's the one different mode or interval from a Dorian to a major. A minor. And then we got the 10-note away minor 7 as opposed to an 11-note away major 7. So those are the intervals that we'll be working on this time. So we've got then our D. So we can first think about the octaves, right? So now I haven't been able to go above first, so now we can go above to the octave. So when I think about octaves, sometimes the octave is going to be the exact same note. I'm just thinking about where is the note, the same note on each string, which will either be the same note or some octave of this note. Where are all the Ds? There's only going to be one of each interval within a 12 note span, which is this fret 0 through 12, and the maximum distance, if we're in the middle of the guitar and can go either way reaching with our hand, has to be 6 frets or less, because if I can go either way, then there's only 12 notes and half of 12 is 6, right? There's 12 frets. All right, so we're gonna go up here. So that means if I go up, that's where it is. Now, notice when I go up, I'm gonna have to start thinking about inverses, but because this is like the interval, I don't really have to deal with the inverse, so I just go, this is gonna be, when I go up, I might call that -5, because when I go down, I'm usually thinking about that as going like up 5. So maybe if I go this way, I could think about it as -5, and if I went this way, that means I would be going higher in the negative direction, and if I go this way, I would be going back towards 0. So I might say, well, this is -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, and then 0, or back to the D. So that's going to be it. So I'm going to say, let's actually change this one, make this one like red, because that's what we were doing before. Let's do an outline here, make that one red. I'll put the orange over here, and then the yellow will be the counting. That's what we did before. All right, so if I count it here, there's the D. So I'm going to say, all right, so D, if I go up, I'm going to say that's -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, and 0. There's the other D. Boom, boom. So if I was to think about that shape, where is the octave if I go up a string? It's going to be, if I go up a string, it's going to be forward 5 frets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That will always be the case unless I'm going over the fault line down here. So my default will be that is what it is. Unless I go over the fault line, I'm only going to say the unless in my mind when I do this exercise on my own when I go over the fault line. All right, and then if I go to the string down below, where's it going to be? Well, I can see it right there. So I can say, okay, that's in the open. So if I go down below, here's my D that I'm on. I'm going to say that's going to be, now I'm counting normally 5. And then when I go this way, I would go up, going this way. I'm going backwards. So I'm going to say this is going to be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 0 or 12 back to the octave or the same note. So it would be here to here. I don't have to actually reach for it, of course, because that's an open, it's on the nut. But if it wasn't on the nut, I could still barely reach that because it's 5 frets back. So the octaves are fairly easy to kind of understand. We're going to say, okay, if I go up, it's going to be 5 frets forward is the octave, which is basically just in terms of like getting your tectonically or tactically, or what do they say, tectonically, you can reach about 5 is your maximum reach. So, right, if I went up this way, I could just get that feel. That's as far as I can go, and that's basically where the interval is. Same going back, it's about as far as you can go, 5 frets back if I was to reach it going down 1. All right, so then let's go up. We're going to go down 2 strings. So if I go down 2 strings, boom, boom, I can see it right there. This is possibly the one piece people learn most readily, most often, because it's going to be in some of our shapes when we look at the octaves, when we look at bar shapes, for example. So how is that counted? Well, it's going to be 5, 10, 11, 12, right? So 5, 10, 11, 12. I was supposed to use the orange one here. There we go. If I count it out over here, it's going to be 5, 10, 5, 10, 11, 12. So octave, so that means the octave is always going to be, if I go down 2 strings, the octave is always 2 frets forward. So if I go down 2 strings, the octave is 2 frets forward. All right, what if I go down 3 strings, and this time I'm going across the fault line, which doesn't always happen, because if this shift this shape up, then I wouldn't go across the fault line. So this time I have to say in my mind I'm going down 3 strings and crossing the fault line, which is the exception to the rule, and I can see the D is back here. So what's that going to be? It's going to be 5, 10, and then when I cross the fault line, I have to go this way because the tectonic shift, that plate has been moved up here. So 5, 10, 15, and then when I go backwards, I can go 15, 14, 13, and then 12. Now notice when I get to 15, you might want to bring that down automatically in your mind. So some people might go 5, 10, 15, which I want to say 15 minus 12 because there's only 12 notes brings me to 3, 3, 2, 1, 0, or 12 back around the circle. So that if I count it this way, we're going to say this is going to be 5, 10, up here on the fault line, 15, 14, 13, 12, boom. So that means if I go down 3 strings and I cross the fault line, then the octave is going to be 2 frets back. And notice this whole tectonic plate shifted to the right. So if I moved this shape up, then it would be back 1. It would be 1, 2, 3 frets back. So the exception is that it's only 2 frets back instead of 3 frets back when I go down 3 strings. All right, let's go down 4 strings. Now, by definition, if I go 4 strings down, I will have crossed the fault line. So I don't really need an exception to the rule. Going down 4 strings means that I will have crossed the fault line, and therefore I can just say that, right? So I'm going to say down 4 strings, 1, 2, 3, 4 strings down, and I'm looking for that D. So here's one right there. So if we count that out, we've got 5. Now, note, you might do this, by the way. You might say, hey, look, I know where the octave is above, and that's possibly the easier one to find because it's right there. And then you can say, well, that's going to be the same down below. Now, as long as if your string is closer to the top, that's probably the way to go because these 2 strings are the same. So you could say I could find it right there. That's easier to count than finding it down here. Therefore, I'm going to go here first and then find this one. That's possibly the way to go, but let's count it out too. 5, 10, and then 15 up here, which I'm going to say 15 minus 12 is 3. And then down to here, I'm not crossing the fault line between these two, so that's 3 plus 5 is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there we have it there. So again, I would probably go like this. Well, there's the D on this one. It's my full reach, and then that means the D down here is the same. All right, so then let's go to the next one down. So now I'm going to say that I'm on the second. Now notice when I look at the second of a scale, then if I looked at it in terms of chord constructions, we skip the second. So I would think of that as the 9th. Now remember that you could think of it, well, it should be an octave higher, but I'm just thinking about this as though it's in a circle that just goes around and repeats, not getting into octaves. And therefore, from that perspective, the 2-note away major second is equivalent from a chord construction standpoint of the 9th, because once we get past 7 notes in a scale, we just keep going to the 9th, which is equivalent to the 2nd, is the basic idea. So it's a 2-note away major second, the major second meaning it's the second of the scale here, and it's 2 notes away. That's the actual distance in half steps, our major counting function. So I'm going to say here, that's going to be right here. Our measuring unit is a note. So it's right there, 2 notes away, 1, 2. That's what it sounds like. The good old hammer on. Oh yeah. All right, so then if I go above 1 string, I can say, if we go up, I'm looking for that E. It's going to be back here. Now this is the one there's possibly people don't know quite as well because, again, it's not in the major triad. So this is one that you might not have as locked in as possibly, or, might have more locked in the roots and the fifths and the thirds. Right? That would make sense. But let's count it up. So we're going to say this is going to be, I'm going to say that's -5, -6 as I go backward, -7, -8, -9, -10. Now you're going to go like, what? I thought it should be 2. Why is it 10? Because when I go up, I'm looking for the inverse. So the difference or the distance between these 2 notes is going to be measured from a guitar from top to bottom. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then down 1 is 10. But the inverse, therefore, is 12 minus 10, which is 2. So now we get into this kind of inverse concept. So remember that we're thinking about this whole thing as it's kind of like a circle. So that means if going in one direction, it takes me 10 steps, that means the inverse going in the other direction is 2 steps. So whenever I go up a string, how am I going to do this? I want to find a 2-note away major second. Well, I have to look for the inverse distance then, which is 10 notes away. So let me think that again. I'm going to say, okay, this is going to be -5, -6, -7, -8, -9, -10. So if this distance is 10 notes away, that means if I played it from top to bottom, that would be a 10-note away major, 10-note away minor 7. So that means from bottom to top is going to be a 2-note away. So if I use this as my pivot point, the inverse, that's got to be a 2-note away major second then. So that's why the inverse is going to become important. So it's going to be useful for me to say, wait, like a 10-note away minor 7 has an inverse of a 2-note away major second, because if I'm measuring from a note as my root note that's below a string above it, I'm going to have to think in inverses to basically try to figure out what is happening, because I'm going to know the shape going this way more than I'm going to know the shape going the other way. All right, so that's enough of that. Let's go down. So that means one more thing. It's not quite enough. If I go up one string, that means that the 2-note away major second is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets back. So if I go up one string, the 2-note away major second is going to be 5 frets back, and it's equivalent to the inverse shape from top to bottom of a 10-note away minor 7. Okay. All right, so then let's go down one. So now I'm going to go down to here, and so we're looking for a 2-note away. So there it is. Let's count that out. Now we can go normally a distance of just 2 notes, which is going to be 5, and then when I go backwards, I go back. So 5, 4, 3, 2. So 2-note away major second. If I go down here, it's going to be 5, 4, 3, 2. Boom, boom. So a 2-note away major second, if I go down one string, is always 3 frets back. So if I go down one string, the 2-note away major second is always 3 frets back, unless I'm crossing the fault line. All right, and then I'm going to go down 2 strings, 1, 2 strings down, and then there's going to be my E up here. So let's count that up, or down, 5 or whatever, 5, 10, 10, and then 11, 12, or 0 gets me around the horn, back around that circle, 1, 2. So let me count it this way. We're going to go 5, 10, 11, 12, or 0, 1, 2. So there's an E right there. So that means if I go down 2 strings, the 2-note away major second will always be wherever this pivot point is. It could be up here, it could be over here, boom, boom. The 2-note away major second in relation to this pivot point will be 1, 2, 3, 4 frets forward, unless we're crossing the fault line between these 2 strings. And okay, so then in which case it would be shifted up 1, right? So then let's go down another one. So now we're going to go 3 strings down. 1, 2, 3 strings down. There's the E right there. So now whenever I go 3 strings down and I cross the fault line, which I have to label because I will not always cross the fault line when I go 3 strings down. So this is the exception to the rule. So we're going to say, all right, if I go 3 strings down, it's going to be 5, 10, and then I have to shift up to get to 5, 10, 15, and then we're going 15 back to 14 here, which is 14 minus 12 is 2. Or you could say 5, 10, 15. 15 minus 12 is 3. Minus 1 is 2. So it's going to be from here 5, 10, and then 15. 15 minus 12 is 3. Down 1 is 2. So top to bottom, 2-note away major second. So if I go down 3 strings and cross the fault line, which I often do if I go down 3 strings, because the only time I wouldn't is if I was up here, but I'm still going to call it the exception to the general rule. So if I go down 3 strings and cross the fault line, the 2-note away major second will be on the same fret. All right, and so then we're going to say, okay, let's go down 1, 2, 3, 4 strings, and then we're going to be picking up the 2-note away major second, which is going to be here again. So once again, I would probably say, well, look, I can find it up top. I know that the 2-note away major second is back here. That's easier to find because it's only 1 string away, and then if I had to count it, and therefore it's going to be the same on the bottom because they're tuned to the same note. But if I count it out, then it's going to be 5, 10, and then 15 up here. 15 minus 12 is 3. 3 plus another 5 directly down would give us 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. 2-note away major second. All right, let's try to do one more. We're going to go down to the 3rd. Notice that the 3rd then is within, when I think about chord construction, it's an odd, therefore it's going to be the 1, 3, 5, so it's in our normal triad chord. It's possibly the second most important note. It's going to give the flavor of the triad. It's the defining factor as to whether we're talking about a major triad chord or even major or minor mode. This being why the Dorian is a minor mode, the 3rd, so it's quite important. So then we're going to say, all right, the 3rd is a 3-note away minor 3rd, as we would expect, given it's a Dorian. So if I was on the same string, it's going to be 3 notes away. So I'm going to say, all right, 3-note away. So there it is right there, that F. All right. So that's a 3-note away minor 3rd. Sounds like the minor 3rd. If I go up 1 string, then I have to remember, look for the inverse, because when I go up a string, I look for the inverse distance. So if it's a 3-note away minor 3rd, 12 minus 3 is 9. So that would be a 9-note away major 6. So that's the inverse of a 3-note away major 3rd is a 9-note away major 6. So if I'm looking for a 3-note away major 3rd, I'm looking for a distance of 9 if I'm going to the string above. So it's going to be -5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's the F. So that means from top to bottom, if I look at that shape from F to D, that's going to be a 9-note away major 6. And therefore, from bottom to top, it's going to be a 3-note away minor 3rd. So I would typically do it like this. I'd say, here's what I'm looking for, 3-note away minor 3rd. I'm going above to the string above. Therefore, I look for the inverse distance, which is 9 notes away. So it's going to be -5, 4, wait a sec, how did I do that? It's going to be, therefore it's going to be -5, -6, -7, -8, -9, top to bottom, 9-note away, which would be a major 6, and therefore bottom to top is a 3-note away minor 3rd. So it takes a while to think about how to look at that distance from the perspective of the string below the one above it, because we usually see the shapes from top to bottom. But so that's what we want to work on a lot in our process here. So then if I go on the string below it, there we have, so if I go 1 below, we're going to say it's going to be 5 down here, 4, 3. So 5, 4, 3, if I count it up here, 5 down, 4, 3, top to bottom. So the 3-note away minor 3rd, if I go down 1 string, is always 2 frets back, unless I cross the fault line between these two, in which case the whole thing would shift up and it would be 1 fret back, looking like it was a major 3rd, but no, it'd be a minor 3rd. So it's going to be here on the minor. All right, and so then let's go 2 strings down. So I'm going to go 5, so down to here. Let's just find it first, and then we'll count it out. We're going to say this is going to be 5, 10, and then 11, 12, or 0, 1, 2, 3. So let's count it on the guitar from here, 5, 10, 11, 12, or 0, 1, 2, 3. So there's my F there. Boom, boom. So if I go down 2 strings, if I go down 2 strings and I don't cross the fault line, so down 2 strings, it's gonna the 3-note away minor 3rd will always be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets up. which is basically my maximum distance generally to be able to touch both of those kind of at the same time. So that might help us to memorize it tectonically with your feeling with your hands, tactilely, tactically. I don't know. There's some kind of way to say tactile, like touching, which I should learn because you think that would be a useful word for the guitar. Anyway, let's go down 3 strings. I'm looking for this one right there. So now we're looking for a 3-note away minor third, down 3 strings, and we crossed the fault line. So we're going 5, 10, and then crossing this way to 15, and 15 minus 12 is 3. So that one might look more familiar because that's going to be part of our bar-shaped. So it's an A shape from a cage system, bar shape, and that third is going to be quite important. So it's going to be that shape right there. So if I go down 3 strings and cross the fault line, the minor third will be 1 fret forward. All right, and then if I go down 4 strings, I can see one back here. We probably would do the same thing we did before and say, well, look, if it's on the bottom string, it's going to be the same as the top string. And it was easier for me to look up and say, well, there was my third is back here. So therefore, on the bottom string, it's going to be right there. Same, or we can count it out and say this is going to be 5, 10, 15. 15 minus 12 is 3, plus another 5 gives us 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. So there we have that one. All right, so now we're gonna continue. Next time we'll basically just continue on with the rest of them, and you can hopefully kind of get an idea of the exercise here. And like I say, if you get good at the exercise, you can do it with just like a fretboard. Even if you didn't have a guitar, even if you had the fretboard on on a stick or something, on a piece of paper, you can kind of this is a good little exercise you can think out. And if you can visualize if you can really visualize, you can do this exercise kind of in your mind, right? And that would be quite useful. You could probably do it first off with the octaves. You'll probably be able to visualize those if you practice that pretty good. And then maybe the third and then maybe the fifth are going to be more stand out in your mind because they're part of the chord constructions and you have more reference points to them. And then the second and the fourth and the sixth are probably going to be the most difficult because those are kind of more color chords that you add to a color notes to a chord that you would add. But after we do that, then we'll go to the E, which again, we'll use all the same notes. So we're going to be really emphasizing this same shape. But we're going to be looking then at, when we move there, we'll be looking at the Phrygian, which means we'll take a look at all the intervals that are related to the Phrygian, which is a minor mode, but it's not the main minor, and it has 1 note difference than the main minor, which in this case is the second. It has a minor second. So to do that, we'll actually go down here, and we'll note there's that minor second. And then when we go to the F, we're going to be going to the Lydian mode. So again, we'll use the same things, but we'll make it the first, and we'll then use the same notes, but we'll be down here, and we can look at the intervals related to the Lydian. And so we're just looking at all the same shapes for C major, A minor, but it really is different if you play, say, in a Lydian mode, making that the tonic. It'll sound more like a major versus a minor, right? There's a big difference between, the sound of an F Lydian and, an A minor or C major even, right? So it really does make, and then we'll do the same for the Mixolydian. And then of course, once you get all the intervals down, you can construct any interval, right? I can go to the C, instead of a C major, I can go to the A major and related intervals, and we can construct everything from the intervals. That's one way that we can construct things. You can see things visually by shape, and then you can also see things in terms of the intervals as it's relating to the pivot point, and then we can also see things in terms of what you might call the formula, looking at the interval from note to note as it goes whole, half, whole, half, and that kind of thing. So that's going to be, so that's the idea.